Hello and welcome back to From the Backseat. I am back from my vacation, so we are finally back to posting, and I am joined again by my co-host.
What up, guys? Clark back again, here with great takes, terrible takes, depending on what you really want to call it. I think they're all good, but again, it's open to opinions, and I'm always here for you no matter what. So don't worry, people. I'm back.
And I am also back. I'm Ethan. I'm your host. And today we have a very special honor. These two gentlemen get to say they're our first ever guests onto the show, and that is Drew Code Sports Talk. We are joined today by both Drew and Cody. We are so excited to have you guys on the show. How are you guys feeling?
Absolutely fantastic. I am so excited for this. I know Cody and we've been talking about this for like a whole month.
Yeah,
and
we've been pumped since your first email, Ethan. To be honest, so we've been gearing ready to go, and of course, finding out what your guys' favorite teams are coming to light. It makes it a little bit more interesting, but nonetheless, we're still super excited.
Yeah,
awesome. No, we're stoked too.
It's okay. We've had people comb through our podcast to try to just destroy us because Clark's a Bengals fan and I'm a Chargers fan, so don't worry about it. People get really angry when we talk about New York or Chicago. I have one sitting. I have a TikTok sitting in the drafts right now about Clark just destroying Chicago fans as well. That I know is also going to make people mad, but I have to let the rage quitting go for a little bit.
Oh man, I want to hear that, so I can't wait for that TikTok.
So today's show is hot takes. So Clark and I have prepared some hot takes. Luckily, we have two guests on today that can also reel in what Clark and I think. So last week I went first. So this week, Clark, it is your turn to go first with your hot take. So what was your take this week?
Well, since I'm a man of the people and I truly try to, make sure that I have at least a couple stored up, I was bouncing between the few that I really liked, but I settled on one, that I think makes not only the most sense, but I think is also one that maybe not a lot of people are thinking about. And it came to me when looking at, nonetheless, Vegas odds or whatever online for over under win totals. I came across the Arizona Cardinals. Theirs were set at 9.5. And, I went through and I decided to take a little peek at what the Cardinals had done this offseason and, the transactions, things that had gone on, the draft overall. I've come to the conclusion, and maybe some people won't take this as extremely hot, but I think for me this week, the Arizona Cardinals will miss the playoffs in 2022, 2023 this season. I don't see them as a playoff team this year. I think when you look at the schedule, that's the first thing that really jumps out to me with the Cardinals. I think this year they got a dagger of a thing to go through. I think the NFC West, for what it's worth, at least in my mind, is the best division in the NFC as it stands. I think they're outclassed by both the 49ers and the Rams. And I think on top of that, the division they play in the AFC West, I have a hard time seeing which one of those teams that they're actually going to beat. And the big thing for me too, the AFC West. Yeah, the AFC West is who they play.
NFC.
No, I'm saying no. They play the AFC West as their AFC option.
I see what you're saying.
So not only they play the NFC West, they play the AFC West as their AFC conference opponents. And so another big thing that stands out more than anything else with the Cardinals is that they have a really tough start to the schedule this year. I believe they open against teams Kansas City, Oakland. They play the Rams, the Eagles. So in there, realistically, they have a couple softballs they have against the Seattle Seahawks. But to me, I see them only winning 2 of those 4 games, 2 of those first 6. And so when you go through it, Cliff Kingsbury as a coach, and it dates all the way back to Texas Tech, is a guy who starts the season really fast and then goes the second half of the season and just lays a freaking egg. And so I see the Cardinals doing the same thing. I don't think they're going to start fast this year. And the back end of their schedule is freaking brutal when they come down the stretch. So for me, when I look at the Cardinals, I don't see them making the playoffs. And I think even more if you throw in the fact of the turmoil they've had with Kyler Murray this season, a little bit in the offseason, I just have my doubts. And so when I look at the Cardinals, I just don't think I trust that team to make it back to the playoffs. And maybe you call it the recency bias after watching one of the worst playoff performances I've seen in recent history unfold in front of my face. But I think when I look at the Cardinals, don't see them as a playoff team this year. I think they're taking a step back, and I think maybe it's the last year to see Cliff, and maybe the last year to see Kyler in the desert. So, Arizona, sorry about it, but we'll be seeing you not in the playoffs.
So, Drew, I'll let you say, what are your initial reactions to that hot take?
I don't think it's that crazy just because he's right. I was just looking at that schedule as you were talking, and it's really brutal. I mean, exactly what you're saying. I mean, you got Kansas City, Las Vegas, the LA Rams, and then you kind of go into a little bit of an easy spell where you got Panthers, Eagles, Seahawks, Saints, Vikings. And then towards the end, it gets rough. I mean, you see the Buccaneers, you see the Broncos. I would still argue, like, the 49ers, we still don't necessarily know how they're going to be, but they might. I mean, what other did they change other than their quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance? And technically, Garoppolo's still there, so he could still be that quarterback. So this Niner team could be potentially really good. So I don't think it's crazy. My only thing is, I don't know what teams you're going to put ahead of the Cardinals. I don't think the Cowboys are probably. I don't think they're getting in. I think the Eagles are definitely going to win that division, in my opinion. I haven't been super high on the Saints, and I said I was going to regret that, but I don't know. I just still don't know how Jameis Winston really is. We saw one really good year, but that was with Sean Payton. Now you have a defensive-minded head coach who we saw when he coached with Oakland, he was absolutely trash.
Yeah.
So for me, I just don't know who you're going to put ahead necessarily. I think the Cardinals can sneak in because I do feel like, nonetheless, the NFC West has gotten a little, or I should say has regressed because the Seahawks are not going to be good. The 49ers, like we said, we have no idea. Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo could be great or could be really bad. We don't know. And so with just speaking on those terms, I just have a hard time putting other teams ahead of them, especially I'm not going to put the Cowboys in. I think they've lost already.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. I mean, I understand the Cowboys thing to an extent, but to answer your question, the three teams I think that will be ahead of Arizona. I know you're not as high on the Saints. I think the Saints will be a team that squeaks in ahead of them. I think the Vikings will be a team that gets in ahead of them. And I think my third team actually would be whoever does not win the NFC East between the Eagles and the Cowboys. I still think they're good enough, the Cowboys, to go ahead of Arizona, just looking at things. But again, some people say I'm wrong. I could definitely be wrong here. But I think Arizona, I don't know. I think to me, a lot of it boils down to, I really don't buy Cliff Kingsbury. I really don't. I think he's a dud in the second half. I think it shows up. So I think shows everything. He almost like plays too much of his hand the first half of the season. Like he shows his cards too much, is over creative. And then the second half, something happens. Like I was looking back at it here. I think I wrote it down actually. That since he's coming into the league, they haven't had an over 500 season. Like 2019 started 3-3-1, finished 2-7. 2020 started 5-2, finished 3-6. Last year started 7-0, and then went 3-5. Yeah. So I don't know. I just don't buy Cliff. I think it's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
What about Kyler? What do you think is going to happen with Kyler? If you're predicting they're not going to make the playoffs, that means Kyler's probably not going to have that good.
Yeah, I think Kyler has a good shot to be gone. I think there's been a lot of things that have been brought up. I don't think it's a good thing this offseason that you had guys like DeAndre Hopkins and other veterans saying like, hey, we need him to be here. There's a lack of leadership going on. I mean, that's another thing I didn't even bring up. DeAndre Hopkins is gone for those first 6 games where it starts off pretty tough. Yeah. So I can see them certainly losing a game to Philadelphia to drop him to that, 2-4 number. I think that's a big thing for me too. I just think, if Kyler, if they don't make it this year, and if Cliff Kingsbury, if they let him go, I think if you're Kyler, he's probably looking at, I'm going to want to be out of here. This won't be a situation I want to be in anymore. So I think if they don't make it this year, I think this is the last. Like I said, I think it's the last year you see Kyler in the desert.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I agree. I mean, I mostly agree with the take. I don't know that there's going to be 3 teams that are worse than. That's the problem. Is the NFC is so weak. It's hard for me not to think they're going to be a wild card team. At least be that
going back
one.
To your hot take of last week, maybe the Detroit Lions sneak in somehow.
I know. I said the Lions might sneak in, but when I listed off the teams I thought they were going to be in, I had the Cardinals as one of them that was in.
Open that door, perhaps.
I mean, I get it. I just think Kyler Murray is too good. I think that's where I kind of fall off a little bit from you. Is I just think Kyler is going to keep them in contention at least to get a wild card spot.
I need to see it.
Yeah, it was a really bad playoff game that he had.
Yeah.
And then to go back and then just demand that you want all this money. And it was like, after that performance, I know it's technically recency bias. Like, I mean, what he's done in the regular season. Yeah. But it was a real bad look. And I got to be honest, like that kind of causes concern for me if I'm an organization, just because it was like, you put out that crap and you're like, oh, I need more money. And you're like, for what? Mm-hmm. Like, you didn't do anything.
No, even more points. I mean, how could you? And I think if you look at Kyler too, a lot of what he accumulated stat wise and performance wise was done in that start of that 7-0 run. If you look at his numbers, the second half, kind of like with the way things. I know he was hurt, which is part of it too, but they teetered off. So I mean, I think he's extremely talented. But to your point, Ethan, I mean, I know you said you really like Kyler. I don't know if he can carry a team yet. I haven't seen it at any point.
I mean, he's made the playoffs his first, I think, 2 out of 3 years. And he had to take over that Josh Rosen-led team, right?
I don't think they made it last year before this one. I guess his first playoff appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this was his first playoff appearance?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then that's on me.
I don't know. Like I just said, I just need, if Kyler he needs to do it. Year 4, show me you can carry a team. Yeah. Especially with D-Hop out. Like if he lays an egg without D-Hop, there's something to be said there. Like, what's going on? We need to and they got Hollywood Brown, but it's just like, I don't know.
They don't have Christian Kirk anymore. It's going to be just a horrible
to go play the Jaguars.
He's going to thrive in Jacksonville. He's going to
thrive. That great receiving core over in Jacksonville of Marvin Jones.
I bet you Arizona's regretting that now. They're like, oh, man. We would have known about this D-Hop situation. Yeah.
I mean, they didn't want to pay Christian Kirk top 5 money. Yes. I mean, Christian Kirk is literally like the third highest paid receiver in the league right now.
I don't know. I really just didn't see Christian Kirk getting that. But, Jaguars have no clue what's going on. They're a headless chicken over there. So,
yeah.
So that's me.
Ethan, all right, let me do mine. So I have had 3 that I've been kind of going back and forth on which one I'm going to do. I decided I'm going to go with the one I feel the most passionate about. And this week's hot take for me is that Tom Brady, when he officially retires, when he's officially done, he should be inducted into the Hall of Fame immediately. He should not have to wait the 5 years. He should get the greatest honor of any NFL quarterback, which is immediate induction into the Hall of Fame.
Is that all you're going to say? Is that it?
Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. He's the greatest of all time. He deserves the greatest honor of any player.
Okay, do you want me to be respectful first, or do you want me to say something else first?
It's up to you.
Okay, well, I'll say this. I agree. Tom Brady is the greatest player in the NFL's existence and history. However, the idea of just bestowing upon him this grand gift is absolutely ridiculous. Because then, first off, how big of a slight is that to every single other person who got inducted? And also every single other player who could claim that they are the respective greatest at their position. Okay, why didn't, Ray Lewis, I mean, I'm not saying he isn't, but like, why didn't a guy like Ray Lewis, regarded one of the best linebackers ever in football, why did he not get to just go ahead right away? Why did Jerry Rice have to wait his 5 years? Why didn't he just get his induction immediately? Why are these guys having to wait? And I think by just giving it to Brady, you probably piss off everyone inside the National Football League Hall of Fame. I think you make all of them very upset. And I know Tom Brady, again, no dispute. The guy's won everything. He's going to have every passing record if he doesn't already at this point have. He's the most accomplished player the league will probably ever see. I mean, I won't say never just because obviously other guys come along. You see the NBA with Jordan, LeBron. It does happen. But again, to me, you can't just give the guy that. That's crazy. That's so disrespectful to everyone else already there.
You just said he's the most accomplished player of all time. He's the most winningest player of all time. So no other player is as accomplished as him. That's why he's the greatest.
Okay, I know, but you don't just give special honors to everyone that just walks through. Then by that logic, I mean, that's stupid.
Why? Players get first ballot Hall of Fame, which is a special honor to players that are better than other players.
Yeah, but they don't get to skip everything.
But Tom Brady is better than them all. Tom Brady is the best player to ever step on a football field and will ever be the best player to step on a football field. We don't know if that's true or not. We don't know.
That's a hot take right there.
You don't think anyone's ever going to be better than him?
He's broken every QB record. He has more Super Bowl wins than every franchise in the league. There is not one franchise that existed for over 50 plus years than Tom Brady has won single-handedly in his 21 seasons.
I get it. I truthfully do. He's a great player, but you can't just shove him in there and not make him wait his time. That's preposterous. That's again, it's blatantly disrespectful to everyone who's gotten into the Hall of Fame prior to him.
Look, if it's disrespectful, then be as good as Brady. Brady
That's
is the
stupid.
greatest of
Some
all
people
time.
can. Some people play defensive
exactly,
end.
because they're not as good as Brady. Brady is the greatest of all time.
Andrew, come on, this is a little bit ridiculous.
Let's let Andrew get in on the conversation.
I understand where you're coming from. I agree with Clark saying, I mean, he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest. I mean, I would say he's the greatest. I know there's arguments a lot of people say LT may be the greatest football player that we've ever seen, just had issues. But after the stunt that he pulled this offseason, there's no way you can induct him right away. There's absolutely no way, because what's going to get him to be like, oh, maybe I will come back next year. Like, you're not going to run the Hall of Fame and then him be like, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to play another season. So they're going to make him wait just because of what he did this offseason.
Exactly. Thank you. That's not a point I didn't even think of. Thank you, Andrew, for backing up. Just a fabulous point there.
I hate taking sides.
On that point, do you think Brady actually retired, or do you think the media forced him to say he was retired then to unretire?
No, I think he definitely.
But the report came out without his announcement, and then he announced it like 3 days later.
He's a grown man. He can make his own decisions. I don't think he's getting peer pressured.
I think everyone reported it.
Yeah, I think he thought he was that Miami's Dolphin ownership was a done deal. I think he really thought that. So I think that report came out and he was like, oh, well, I didn't want that to come out yet until I fully knew for like 100%. So he was like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm just going to retire. And then I think once it fell through, he was like, all right, well, I'd kind of like to play then. I wanted to be around football somehow. And I don't want to go to the booth yet. I'm not going to be an owner. Might as well go back. And I think he actually got Bruce Arians removed as head coach. That's what I think that he did.
Wow. Why would he want Bruce Arians?
I could see it. They did have some issues.
Because a lot of people speculated that he ended up moving out as head coach, or that him and Arians, Brady and Arians, had a lot of issues. They didn't see eye to eye, that Leftwich and Brady were more connected with each other. And so there was a lot of Arians wants it his way and doesn't really listen to Brady all that much. He'll listen to Brady's suggestions and then just kind of go with whatever he thinks is best, whether it is Brady's or his. So there was some respect there, but I do feel like he was like, if I'm going to come back, I want Leftwich or just me and Leftwich to call offense. I don't care if he's the head coach or not, but Arians can't be, because he's going to want final say. And I think Tampa was so having all this success and obviously won a Super Bowl with Brady. I think they were like, yeah, let's just put him aside here in the front office or something as a scout or something, and we'll put Bowles as the head coach, and that way Leftwich, all he has to focus on is offense.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't discard the idea that he forced Arians out. Again, I had heard they'd had their issues, and I think if you're Tampa Bay, you want to keep what in reality is the Golden Boys still happy. You don't want to upset Tom Brady, the guy who's made Tampa Bay more relevant they have since 2002 when they had Gruden and won the Super Bowl.
Well, the other issue
not to rub that in.
Well, the other issue for Tampa Bay is if Brady had actually retired, they were going to left with being like Kyle Trask as their starter. They were in such a bad position.
So bad.
Well, I think
they were talking about Blaine Gabbert. They were like, Blaine Gabbert is like great. We're going to play him. And we're like, we saw that in Jacksonville.
Yeah, we saw everything we needed to from Blaine Gabbert. He can hold the clipboard and brush the hair back a little bit if need be. But Blaine doesn't need to be doing anything else. We saw it in Jacksonville, like you said, and
he takes a knee great too.
Takes a knee great. Yeah, he comes in garbage time if you're up 30. The thing is true with Tampa Bay, I think, is if Brady doesn't come back, some of the guys they retain in free agency, if not all of them, are saying, bye, I'm not coming back. Why would I? I mean,
Ryan Jensen would have never stayed.
Ryan Jensen definitely said. I mean, there was even the report with like Tom Brady tried to get Alex Kappa back. I mean, fortunately, he didn't for the Bengals' sake, but it was basically like, hey, I'm back. Come back and play for me. I think a lot of more guys would have just deuced out and said, see ya. So think Tampa Bay definitely got lucky with Brady coming back. And I think, like you said, Andrew, I think it's very plausible that he was like, all right, I'm done with Bruce. Give me someone else in here. So,
yeah. I mean, I have no inside information, so I couldn't tell you. I'm just guessing here. But
purely speculation. But I like the idea. I think there's credence to that. So.
Look at me having hot takes on here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. Do you have any personal hot takes you'd like to? Anything you just want to air out? We say some pretty ridiculous stuff on here, so get as far out there as you want. And if not, then we'll move on.
Hot takes. You know,
How about this? Who's a surprise Super Bowl contender? You think a team no one talks about that you could see making it to the Super Bowl this year?
I would say the Eagles. I have been really high on this Eagles team. Because what Cody and I do on the podcast that we've done for 2 years now is we go through division by division. We break down wins and losses, and we predict who we think is first going to win the division, what the record is going to be, and trickles down obviously into the other divisions. And so we kind of do that. And I just recently did the NFC East, and I was like, I love the Eagles. I mean, you have A.J. Brown. You have Jalen Hurts, who I'm not super high on Hurts, but at least last year he showed that he can get it done. And they were 9-8 last year. I mean, they barely were out of the playoffs. So for me,
They made the playoffs last year. They lost.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
They got smeared by Tampa Bay. They might have missed it, but
yeah. Sorry, I tried to forget that because I like this Eagles team. But their defense, I thought, was very, very underrated last year. I thought it didn't get enough credit. Now, when you go against a buzzsaw like a Tom Brady, I mean, you're going to get picked apart no matter what. I mean, Brady's been doing it for years. But with the Eagles, I think their defense, now you have a year behind that defense. You have a year behind your quarterback. Now you've solidified, hey, you're our quarterback. We gave you a number one receiver. Now you got to do something with it. And I just don't see anyone in this division. I mean, I know you guys were saying you think maybe the Cowboys would probably push back on them a little bit. But I just think the Eagles, I don't see anyone stopping them in that division. I don't trust the Commanders. I don't trust the Cowboys. And I definitely do not trust the New York Giants, which I've been really down on them.
Yeah.
So I really like this Eagles team, and I think the only downside with them is that they don't have they're not really having a tough of a schedule to really say, hey, this team is with the top teams. I think you're going to see a really good record, but it's going to be hard to compare to like a Tampa Bay or possibly, the Los Angeles Rams and all that. So I think that's going to be what their issue is going to be. And when they get to the playoffs, that would be my concern. But if they can win that first playoff game, because I think for sure they're getting in the playoffs, I think the Eagles could be sneaky good.
No, I mean, Ethan definitely is a big fan of that take.
That was my hot take.
I saw your hot take. Son of a...
No, it's not stealing. It's great. I mean, again, I like the Eagles. I think, again, when I've talked about them, I think my biggest thing, I'm a little bit higher on Jalen Hurts maybe than you are, Andrew, but I think when I look at Hurts going through college, even professionally, he's continued to get better every year, take another step forward, play a little bit better. And I think there's been giving me no reason to think that he doesn't do that again. And I think weapon-wise on offense, I think Miles Sanders is a good back, not great. I think their trio of pass catchers, if you go by including a tight end, you have Devontae Smith, you have A.J. Brown. I think Dallas Goedert is a really underrated tight end as well, too.
Yes.
I really like Goddard.
Hey, Quez Watkins is also a good player.
No, Quez Watkins is a good player. So the weapons offensively there are there to get it done. I think, as you alluded to, Andrew, the defense, I think, plays really well, too. I think it's an underrated unit overall as a group. So I think they don't get enough credit as they are for being, a complete football team. And I think last year you saw, maybe halfway through the season, Eagles fans wanted to have, Nick Sirianni's head, but he turned it around. He learned what they were doing wrong. He turned them into a run-first team, and they got things going. So to me, that shows adaptability as a head coach and an ability to change play call and recognize what's wrong, which is not something a lot of good young coaches do. So good on him.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I like this team. And that, honestly, too, although I'm not high on Miles Sanders, that offensive line is actually pretty good. And then when you have Jalen Hurts, when that offensive line breaks down, it's a potent combination.
No, for sure.
No, they're a good team. You guys also forgot maybe the biggest move they made is they also got Jordan Davis to add to their defense.
No, the defense, next to
Jordan
Davis.
Cox is going to be.
Well,
really
maybe
good.
Hugh just move in your eyes because you were salivating at Jordan Davis for the Chargers.
Hey, I'm a Chargers fan. I mean, that would have been the only reason we didn't beat the Raiders in Week 18 was because our front defense was so bad.
That's why the Chargers lost most of their.
And I thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. We got to figure it out. Hopefully.
Oh,
when you get Khalil Mack, things feel a lot better. Well, so how about this, Andrew? So we've done this on the show too. What are some underrated World Series teams now? Because you seem like a baseball guy.
World Series teams. What makes you think I was a baseball guy? I'm just kidding. No one else saw the conversation that we all had. It's hard for me to say underrated because I think they're really good. I mean, I'll go with the pick that I had on our podcast. We predicted who we thought was going to be in the World Series this year, and my AL team was Boston, and they're on a 7-game winning streak right now. They started off really bad, but I really like this Boston team. I think they're really good. Now their bullpen needs work, if I say that nicely. Mm-hmm. But their starting rotation is not terrible. I mean, Rick Schill has actually been pretty serviceable. I mean, I remember watching him with the Dodgers, and it seemed like every other start he had some blister issue that he was going through. So I like Boston. I like their starting rotation. I think it's not strong, but it's good. And then their lineup. I mean, Xander Bogaerts is just I'm such a huge Xander Bogaerts fan. It's ridiculous. JD Martinez, you forget about that he's in Boston because I wanted him. As a Giants fan, I wanted to sign him when he was a free agent. And when he went to Boston, I was like, Boston got a steal. Mm-hmm. And he had a rough start. I believe it was this year. He had a rough start, and last year, I believe, too. And he's just starting to rake all of a sudden, and you just see it on the scoreboard. And then Rafael Devers, I mean, that guy has the biggest chew in the league and just rakes balls. I mean, he is absolutely a powerhouse, and he's actually solid at third base too. So I really like Boston, and they would probably still. I mean, you look at their record; it's not great. I mean, it's 42-31. They're second in the AL East. I mean. If you were to ask me, I would think Toronto probably would have been second and Boston would have been first. Yeah, but I like Boston a lot, and I think they're a real solid team. They're probably going to be my underdog AL favorite.
No, I really like Boston too. I think one player you left out who really started to heat up there, I think started turning things around a little bit for him was Trevor Story. I think everyone in Boston. Yeah. Everyone in Boston, again, hated Trevor Story. They wanted him gone. They were calling it such a terrible free agent signing. And then the dude just went like an all-time god streak. I think it was against Seattle where he just found the stroke again. And everyone's like, oh, wow, we love Trevor Story, which is just classic fanship in its own right. But, I think he's a huge guy too. One of the teams who I almost said, and I'll throw mine in this too now, because, again, I think the Boston pick is great. Another team that I almost threw in on mine, and I'll be interested to see what you think about this. I think the Cleveland Guardians are sneaky. I think the Cleveland Guardians are a really sneaky team. I think, again, it's the stigma of that it's Cleveland and they're not in first. They're still battling with the Twins. I think, to me, though, starting rotation-wise and the pitching that they have, I really do like. I think the lineup is put together well enough with guys that make hard contact. It's not the most superstar team, but I think overall – to me, I love Rafi Devers, but I think the guy who should be starting at third base for the American League All-Star team should be Jose Ramirez. I think J-Ram is just unbelievable, and the fact they get to stick him in the middle of the lineup every night is absolutely unfair. And then when they sprinkle some nice pieces around him, I think Josh Naylor's been really good for him. I think Franmil Reyes has given him good production. They constantly put the ball in play pretty hard, those two guys. And they just find ways to win. And again, I think going and looking at their pitching, they got a solid staff. I know everyone the king of regression, Cal Quantrill, actually has a good arm. Everyone calls for that guy this year to be like, oh, he just he's the luckiest pitcher in baseball. Well, he finds ways to miss barrels and he makes it work. And Shane Bieber's still a really good guy. I mean, they have dudes in there. I don't know if they won't make the World Series perhaps, but I think they're a team maybe someone wouldn't really want to run into if you were in the postseason. So I think the Boston one is certainly better, but Cleveland's a team that's starting to grow on me a little more. I almost put them out there in a crazy when we talked about baseball earlier, but I was like, I don't want to go too far on a limb.
I don't want to go too far.
Don't want to go too far, but the Guardians for me is a team that's certainly grown. So
I love their starting rotation. I think they're playing. I don't know what is going on. They just lose these weird games. Like I love Shane Bieber, Aaron Savali. I think is solid.
Good.
You talk about Zach Plesac. I actually really like him. His ERA is awful right now, but I mean, I really like their rotation. I think they have really good starting five. Their bullpen is lackluster. I think Austin Hedges, which no offense, but he's not going to be. He's not the catcher of the future.
No, not.
But I agree with you. Jose Ramirez has been really good, and Andres Jimenez. He's listed as their second baseman, but he plays short and second base, and sometimes I think they put him at third every now and then. He's been really good. I mean, he's been surprisingly good. And he's been on 2-3 teams, I think, since, and now all of a sudden he comes on to the Guardians and he finds a home. So, which I'm good for him. And then their outfield, I mean, they have Stephen Kwan, Miles Straw. Yep. You mentioned Franmil Reyes, which you also remember in San Diego. I remember they always talked about Reyes as he had the speed of D. Gordon, but the power of an old school Albert Pujols. And I was like, man, this kid's going to be great. And he just, I mean, now that we're in this day and era of baseball where, it's either you swing and miss or you swing and hit a home run, he's kind of, his batting average doesn't show how good he really is.
Yeah.
I like Reyes a lot, and I was kind of surprised that the Padres did let him go because I think he's found a pretty good home in Cleveland.
No, for sure. I just feel like Cleveland is one of those teams. I think one of their best things is just their ability to develop players. I think they're kind of a niche way in terms of like Tampa Bay is, in the way that, not to the extent that the Giants and Dodgers currently are, but they seem to find players and get value out of them that other teams seem to be lacking. So I think they're always kind of that sneaky team. And I think, a lot of people just peg the Twins to win the Central right out of the gate. And I'm surprised the Guardians are still right here. And I think from the I don't know, they got that sneaky feel to them. So I kind of like what they're doing. But again, like I said, the Boston pick I like better. I think Boston's going to surprise people in the playoffs.
Yeah, so if we're talking about World Series, I would say Boston. But if we're talking about a good sneaky team to make the play, I think a lot of people pick Boston to go into the playoffs. I don't think it's that huge of a statement. But talking about Cleveland, especially like you said, Minnesota, they got Correa, so a lot of people were pegging Minnesota to get
Sanchez, in. They traded for him.
Yeah, and we all saw what he did in New York with a great lineup. Now you're going to a worse lineup. I don't think Sanchez is going to do much, and he hasn't. I'm just surprised that Minnesota is ahead in this AL Central right now, to be honest, because I thought Cleveland, I really like that team.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, let's keep
Ethan.
this rolling. Hello, I'm still here. It's okay. That's the role of the host. So our next segment is Start, Bench, Cut, and I'm going to keep this rolling. So we started this last time. We did hot takes. Clark and I enjoyed the segment, so we're going to continue to do it.
I actually really liked it. I listened to it. It was great. It was great.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. So it's like a classic game that I'm not going to say because that's the first word. We might have kids listen to this. But so the goal of the game is you start a player, you bench a player, and you cut a player. So I'm going to give you 3. So they're not always players. Sometimes they're schools. But we're going to start off with players. I'm going to keep it with baseball. And so we're going to start off with our guest. We're going to start off with Andrew.
Uh-oh.
As you should.
Will you start, bench, cut Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, or Aaron Judge?
Oh, my God. That's not fair. Aaron Judge is from Fresno. Oh, man.
Yes, he is. Right at Fresno State.
Also has hit 26 home runs.
Yes. 27. He's at 27. Great. Oh, he hit one. He hit one yesterday. Yeah. So, well, we're all wrong. Oh, man. Well, I guess if we're talking about just baseball standards, if I were a manager and I were picking out of the 3, I would go Shohei Ohtani because not only is he going to hit for you, he can also pitch for you. But if we're talking about just strictly as a baseball player, I think you have to go Mike Trout. So I don't know what you want me to answer it like, if you want me to answer it like a manager or if you want me to answer it just pure baseball.
It's however you want to. It's however you interpret it.
Okay, well, I just wanted to sound smart then, but I think I'm going to go with Mike Trout because Mike Trout is Mr. Consistency. I love Aaron Judge, but the issue with him is he's injury prone, and that's kind of what I'm worried about. Now, Trout has been getting injured a little bit more here, but his track record has been phenomenal. If you know anything about me or listen to the show, specifically about my baseball takes, I love guys who are consistent. I don't like I like the baseball game that we see now where there's a lot more home runs, but I'm more of the guy who would rather see, a double, a single. I'd rather see good base running where a runner goes from first to third. So Mike Trout to me is that guy. Now I do believe Aaron Judge is also that kind of guy who wants to do the little things right. But again, with his injury history, I would have to pick Mike Trout. So I would start Mike Trout. I would bench Shohei Ohtani again because this guy can play two positions. He's a guy that I see you could pull him off the bench and he could, absolutely rake one. And then Aaron Judge, again, I would have to cut him just because of his injury history.
Okay, so Clark, are there any disagreements?
Yeah, I'd switch one thing about it. Maybe I'll get some brownie points from New York fans over here, and but I actually, as it sits right now, I agree with Andrew. I think the guy you usually start is Mike Trout.
Whoa, you're cutting Ohtani?
I would be cutting Ohtani in this facet, yes.
Wow.
So I'm starting Mike Trout. I think Mike Trout, again, even over the year Aaron Judge is having right now, Mike Trout has been better this year. I would have Mike Trout as my AL MVP. He has been to this point to me, like what he's done over his career. I think it's because he plays in Anaheim and the Angels just can't get him to the playoffs, which is just sad. People just tend to forget how great he is every single year, and this year he's doing it again. He leads Major League Baseball, and I wrote it down just to be sure. He leads it in WAR for position players, OPS, OPS plus, and slugging percentage. It's clockwork for Mike Trout. He's got to be the guy that you start.
Yeah.
However, I would go with Aaron Judge on my bench. I think Aaron Judge, when he's playing like this, and again, I know it comes down to health. When he's playing like this, he's one of the best position players in baseball. He absolutely rakes. I think his eye's gotten a little bit better over the years. And again, I think he's underrated in terms of how he plays defensively. He plays a really good right field. He's got a cannon for an arm. It's not the easiest thing actually to play in New York opposed to what people think because it's so tiny and the quarters aren't really the easiest out there. But again, he's a guy who literally in almost every single offensive category is only trailing Mike Trout, who you could make an argument in my mind is becoming one of the top 10 to 15 players and position player-wise in Major League history if things continue the way that they're going.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'd have Judge at number 2. And then it's not easy. Like, don't please misconstrue this because I love Shohei Ohtani. But I think a little bit of the reality is for me is that he had been good up until last season, which you saw everything he can do when he is on the field at all times, and he put it together. I think it'd be a little bit different if it was like 2 or 3 years in a row of that now, and I knew I was getting it every year. Because I think Shohei, again, if he continues to play like he is this year and last year, he's a guy who you would sit back and be like, yeah, first ballot Hall of Fame lock, because I don't think you haven't seen someone who can throw. He's a 2.90 ERA on the mound. He's absolutely filthy. Yeah. He's also a guy who just, the ball jumps off his bat, high OPS guy. He has a good eye at the plate. He runs the base as well, underrated as well, too. And I think if you stuck him in the outfield somewhere, if he's played right field before, he's a fantastic, defender, too, when he's out there. I like a lot of what Shohei brings, but again, I haven't quite seen enough of it yet to this point to be like, I would take him over a player like Aaron Judge, who you could argue should have won an MVP in 2016 because the Astros were doing some things. So I've heard with banging trash cans. And I think Judge, too, one thing, I know it's not fair to include this sometimes, but Judge overall in his career, I think, has actually been a pretty dang good postseason performer. I feel like a lot of the times when I've watched the Yankees, he's kind of got that signature Yankee way of coming up with big hits. Obviously the Yankees pre, 2009, not since then. He's had some moments now, nothing in the World Series, but that's not his entire fault. But I think, Judge for me would be my bench guy. I obviously got to start Trout. And again, Shohei, as much as it breaks my heart because I love him, I think he's probably one of the most, if not the most fun player to watch. He would be my cut right now.
Clark, it's not It's not crazy because, first of all, you can't go wrong with any of these players.
You can't go wrong with any of them.
But you're right. My argument has been with Shohei Ohtani, a lot of people are like, is he the best since Babe Ruth? And I was like, okay, I think if like Babe Ruth and him had a home run derby, I think he would win unanimously.
Oh, yeah.
But let's talk about, I'm with you, the consistency has to be there. And I had him, I play fantasy baseball, so I had him for, I believe it was the 2020 year, and he was just horrid for me.
Yeah.
He had an ERA of like 8 point something, and then he, hurt himself, and so he was just hitting, and I was like, man, this is not good for me. And the other thing too, Shohei Ohtani, he's not even hitting close to 300 right now. So although yes, he can hit these home runs, he's not a guy who can just swing for a base hit. He's not a guy he's not really a high RBI guy like a Mike Trout is. You put Mike Trout at the plate, he's going to try and get that run in no matter what. Whether it be a home run, whether it be a single, whether it be a double, whatever he needs, he's going to find his spot and he's going to hit it exactly where he wants it to hit it. And that's what makes Mike Trout so special. And I agree with you with the Aaron Judge thing. He's been phenomenal when he plays, but the issue is he's had a lot of injuries. And exactly like you said, it is not easy playing in New York. There is no easy thing about it other than if you're playing well, then it's easy. Yeah. But other than that, you have to play well to get that respect. And luckily he has. But who knows what happens when he gets in the slump? Because every player does. So what happens when he gets into a slump? How does he react to that? We really haven't seen it because, again, he really hasn't had a full year of baseball, and that's what worries me about Judge.
I get it.
Okay, cool. So our next start bench cut is a little bit different. It's because this is a big news story from last week, which I was out of the country for, but Clark wanted me to talk about it. So, Clark, we're going to start with you. You're going to be in the shoes of Arch Manning. Would you start bench cut the University of Texas, University of Georgia, or Ole Miss?
Okay, I'm going to tell you which one I'm immediately cutting.
Which one is that?
Ole Miss. I'm immediately cutting Ole Miss.
Yes.
I'm immediately cutting Ole Miss.
But what about the legacy?
Who gives a rip? Who gives a rip about legacy? Did Peyton go to Ole Miss?
He sure didn't.
He did
no,
not.
His dad did, and his brother.
Who cares? It's Arch's decision to make. And by the way, if it was between it, I would rather spend my years in college in Athens or in freaking Austin than I would Oxford. That's just me. That's one part of it. I think
you've ever even been to Oxford? Just kidding.
Have I been? I've been through Oxford. It's not my favorite.
Yeah, I don't think it would be.
I will give a disclaimer. I'm probably not the person to talk about. My sister goes to Ole Miss, so I'm a little biased.
Too bad they didn't get Arch.
I know, too bad. That would have been way more fun.
It would have been more fun because you maybe could have seen him. I mean, but my start between Georgia and Texas. I maybe will surprise people by saying this. I would start the University of Texas. Wow. University of Texas would be my start. Bench would be the University of Georgia. I get it. The University of Georgia, if you look at the two programs, has been much more successful over the last few years, not only just probably the last decade overall, if you really consider it, and going in and being more successful as a program itself. I still think, though, overall as a program, it is a much bigger deal to go play at the University of Texas. There is still something that surrounds the University of Texas football. There's a reason that even when they are bad, they still have the light on them. It's because it's the University of Texas. They have produced a number of very, very good quarterbacks. Maybe not the most success in the NFL that you wanted, but right now we're just talking about college. And so when you look at it, you have the Vince Youngs of the world. You have Colt McCoys, who when they were in their time at UT, they were absolutely phenomenal, no matter what they did in the NFL. I know Q and Edwards is still there at the University of Texas right now, but I think for me, if I'm Arch Manning, I think he made the right decision going to UT. I know the NIL deal. I wish I could see what that is because I'm sure it's just absolutely through the roof for this kid.
Yeah, crazy.
But the big thing that UGA I think certainly has over UT right now, I think is, and maybe this should be a bigger consideration in my mind, but I guess it's not, is the coaching staff. I think the coaching staff at UGA is definitely probably better than it is at UT right now. But I think my start Texas, bench would be Georgia, and then we're throwing you way out the window. Way out.
Whoa.
Okay, Ethan. So I'm not going to be as mean about Ole Miss.
Slow your roll.
I'll also say I'm going to cut Ole Miss. I don't think it's that great. I mean, it's got some good football prospects that has come out of there. Of course, I know one of them being the running back. Oh man, I'm blanking. McCluster, Dexter McCluster.
Oh wow!
And he went to Kansas City. Yeah,
and AJ Brown,
good. Yeah.
Yes. So
definitely good players.
So they've had some good players come out of there. But if I'm Arch Manning, there's Archie Manning, and then you have Eli Manning, who, I mean, Archie Manning, I think was the more, in my opinion, I think was the more successful quarterback when it came to college. I think he was a more successful quarterback than Eli. Maybe not wins and losses, but for sure, I just feel like his legacy at Ole Miss was way higher than what Eli Manning's ever was. I think a lot of people do forget that Eli Manning did come from Ole Miss because when you think Eli Manning, you're thinking New York Giants. When you think of, well, at least for me, with Archie Manning, I thought of Ole Miss and then the Saints because, the Saints were awful. But so that I'm not saying that they don't have these good players, but if you're Arch Manning, that is a lot to live up to. Not only do you have the Manning name, so you already have that lingering, but then you go into Ole Miss, and let's say you're not very good, you're not as good. That's a lot. That's way harder. Even if you're going to Georgia, I mean, that's still way harder to be in Ole Miss and not be successful. And so I think that's what the mindset of Peyton Manning was when he went to Tennessee was that's a lot of legacy from my dad. And also, too, he was the only reason he was actually ever thinking Ole Miss was not even because of his dad. It was actually because of his brother Cooper, who, if he didn't hurt himself, Cooper was actually going to go to Ole Miss. So Peyton was not even going to go to Ole Miss if Cooper wasn't there. So that's why he ended up going to Tennessee, where it obviously worked out. So for me, it's not that I hate Ole Miss. I just think, first of all, you're in the SEC, so that's already rough. And then you have the legacy of the Manning name in Ole Miss. It's not going to be fun if it's not a great connection. And then imagine if he's like, well, it's not working out for me, so I'm going to transfer. That's even worse. So I think might as well just cut the cord now, go to a different college. So that would be my cut. My start, I'm going to have to agree with you, Clark, is Texas. Georgia, if you know them, they're a defensive-minded team. And then they rely a lot on the run game. I mean, they run 3-4 running backs at a time. And they have really good running backs, there's no question. But, I mean, if you're a quarterback trying to show off what you can do, Georgia's probably going to be more conservative until you're about maybe halfway into your junior year or senior year. So I think the right move here is the University of Texas just because of Steve Sarkisian, the head coach. And then who's offensive-minded and who has done wonders for quarterbacks. I mean, he got, Mark Sanchez some money in New York for a long time. So I just have to go with the offensive-minded head coach. And the lesser of two evils, the one where I can show off what I can do arm-wise, I'm going to go to Texas.
I think it's found very good logic. Love that logic.
For what it's worth, I would have picked Georgia. I would have also cut Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's not wrong. I mean, it's not bad. It's just my issue is that defense and that running. They're not going to be like, oh well, go win us the game. They're going to be like, just hand the ball off.
Yeah, but the one thing with Texas I'm worried about is that is transition into the SEC because they're one of those two teams with Oklahoma who's moving in.
Yeah. I think he's going to just miss that. Or unless I think it's if he leaves early or his senior year is the last year they're going to be in the Big 12. I believe so. I think he's just missing it with the transition.
All right. Well, let's move into our next one. This one I actually have opinions on, but I'm going to leave it to you two.
I would love for you to start, actually.
So it's likely NFL MVP. So, I picked these, so it's not exactly fair. You guys don't know what they are. So who do you think most likely is going to win the NFL MVP? Start, bench, cut. Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, or Lamar Jackson?
Andrew, I'll let you go first. Guest always goes first, except for the last segment.
Yeah. Man, that is a good one.
Thank you. I pick them myself.
I don't want to upset anyone because I know your guys'
no, it's okay.
teams.
It's okay.
No. I mean, Derek Carr is my pick. No.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Every ounce in me wants to say Lamar Jackson to start, but I do worry with his weapons that they're going to rely on him too much. So I feel like he's going to have some duds. So I'm actually going to say I'm going to cut Lamar Jackson just because I do think he's going to have some really bad games. We saw it last year where when things weren't going their way, he kind of tried to just run. And he fumbled a lot, and then he tried to force some balls. It wasn't great for me. So, and I actually really like Baltimore. I actually picked them to win the AFC North, and Cody he hated that. He was like, "Oh my God, that's the worst take ever." And I was like, "I'm sorry. I really like their defense. I mean, none of them are hurt now, so I just feel like he's going to have some clunkers. So I'm going to cut him." And maybe it's the podcaster in me too that wants to be a little controversial, but
that's okay.
I'm gonna bench. I'm gonna bench Justin Herbert because I can't pick a Charger. I am so sorry, but I can't pick a Charger. No, I think Justin Herbert is really talented, but I think he does sometimes revert to Austin Eckler a lot more than I think I would like him to. He throws a pretty deep ball, man. But Allen has kind of I don't want to say he's regressed, but he hasn't been the focal point.
We said on this podcast, both of us agree that Keenan Allen is not the player
he's not what and I don't know I don't know what year it was, but all of a sudden, like last year, he just wasn't this big presence like he was. Now, Mike Williams, I loved Mike Williams coming out from college from Clemson. I thought he was going to be so good, but he kept getting injured. So I really like Mike Williams, but I really don't like the tight ends. And then, like I said, I just the checkdowns that he goes to Austin Eckler where he kind of makes him make a play. If Eckler's not there, it does seem like Herbert does kind of struggle a little bit because he doesn't have that safety net. Now, you can probably say that about every quarterback, but I'm just going to go with Joe Burrow as the favorite out of those three. I think what Joe Burrow did last year was absolutely phenomenal. It needed to have more respect, I think, than it actually got. I feel like they talked about it a lot at Super Bowl, and I was like, I still don't think they talked about it enough. Like, I think they need to really show that this Bengals team was absolute crap the year before. And all of a sudden this year he came in and the offensive line was horrible. It was one of the worst offensive lines, and they still got to the playoffs. And he got sacked like 9 times against Tennessee and still made it to the freaking Super Bowl. That's incredible. And then he doesn't rely a lot on Joe Mixon, and I actually think that's made Joe Mixon even better. And then, of course, Jamar Chase has been a godsend. But I think the unsung heroes of that team was also Tyler Boyd. He came up huge in a lot of games. I remember looking at fantasy football, and I was just like, Tyler Boyd, I mean, he needs to be talked about more. I mean, what he does, like, he's the Jarvis Landry of that team. He's the guy who's getting like 12 catches, but only like 60 yards. And Jamar Chase is the guy who's getting, the 5 catches for 150. So, of course, you're going to talk more about Jamar Chase, but he just does the little things. I really like Boyd. So and I really like their tight end, Uzama. I was kind of sad to see that they let him go. But I thought he did some good things too. So I'm going to go with Joe Burrow just because what he did last year, I don't see him regressing this year. I do see that team taking a step back just because when you lose the Super Bowl, history tells you it doesn't really work out for you the next year. But I do think out of those three guys, I think Joe Burrow is the more likely candidate to win the MVP if they're even decent.
Okay, Clark, right. What do you think?
I really like it. I mean, obviously, as a Bengals fan, I love to hear any Joe Burrow praise that I can possibly hear, because I feel like he gets a little bit overshadowed still by the quarterback behind him. But obviously, understand it. So I will start off with who I'm cutting. I actually will go with the surprise. I would cut Lamar too as mine.
All right.
I think my biggest concern is, again, I don't want this to get misconstrued. I love Lamar Jackson. I'm a huge Lamar Jackson guy. I think my biggest thing for him is not because of him. It's because of the weapons around him. I think when you look at things, Rashad Bateman, I really like, but the ultimate reality is he's in his second year. He didn't play a lot last year. There wasn't a ton of involvement in the offense. I love Mark Andrews. I think he's a top 3 tight end in the NFL. When you really look outside of that, what do we truthfully have for him to work with? I know the running backs will be back with J.K. Dobbins, but I just think he won't put up maybe the numbers that these other guys, the 2 guys we have on this list with him. My bench will be Joe Burrow. I love Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow is absolutely fantastic. I mean, he's my quarterback. I don't have a lot of bad things to say about him. Again, like you, I think his regular season got a little bit looked over just because,
because of Jamar Chase, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that kind of overshadowed a little bit, but I mean, 34 touchdowns, so I believe it was like 10 to 12 interceptions. Fantastic year. Led the NFL in yards per passing air yards per attempt. But my start is Justin Herbert because, to me, I think Herbert's one of those talented passers in the NFL, and I think the NFL and its writers and everyone is really looking to bestow upon him the crown of the next great quarterback. So I think if he has a really good year, they're just going to give any excuse, give it to him. He plays in LA. It's bigger than Cincinnati. He'll get more attention. I think Justin Herbert, if he has, like, say, he has a similar year to like Josh Allen or Burrow or one of these other guys, they're going to hand it to Herbert because they want to crown him, I think, at this point. I think it's been a waiting. There's everyone talking about he's the next dude. So I think Herbert would be my start.
It's funny. Mine would be different than both of yours. I wrote this. I was going to have Lamar as my start. I think Lamar –
He doesn't have anyone to throw to.
Well, my thing is usually with these MVPs, they usually put expectations like, oh, that player wasn't supposed to be as good as they are. Like, that's how they became the most valuable player. And I think if Lamar plays really well, the writers are going to look at, wow, he has no one, but he's, like, so good. And
Does it change your mind to know that the Ravens have the highest odds of the AFC North to win the division this year?
No, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, they had a really good draft. I mean,
that doesn't surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise. I mean, Drew picked them to win it. I was still.
I know. I can't believe either of you, to be completely honest. I can't.
No, I just said I would pick the Bengals to win that division, but it doesn't surprise me that they have the highest odds. I mean, John Harbaugh is a top 5 coach. Lamar Jackson's a top 10 quarterback. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Mark Andrews, top 3 tight end. Now, do I agree with it? No, but I get it.
Okay, so he's your start.
So he would be my start. Justin, I'm just going to speed through it. We're almost at the end. Justin Herbert would be my bench, and Burrow would be my cut. I don't think Herbert or Burrow are going to win it this year. I just thought those 3 quarterbacks are the most similar of probably prospects. I thought about doing Mahomes instead of Jackson, but I thought we'd probably all pick Mahomes as a start.
I would still pick Herbert. I'd pick Herbert.
Really?
I would pick Herbert over Mahomes. Yeah.
You should. I mean, look. I think there is something to be said for a guy who hasn't won the award either. I think sometimes you have to be to get a second MVP. They really, really want to see even a progression above what that was. Yeah. And so again, I think that kind of figured into my argument too. I think the NFL I feel like this offseason, everyone and last season fell in love with Justin Herbert. Everyone is talking like he's such a huge talk, and I get it. I think they're looking to crown their next guy up there, and I think he's the one they want to give it to. It's him and Josh Allen, I feel like, would be the guys that they want to bestow that next kind of crown to. So
if you would have said Josh Allen, I would have said Josh Allen all day. But I mean, I understand why you picked the 3, but I agree with you, Clark, what you're talking about with Herbert. They want to crown the next guy. I didn't even think of that. Like LA, they've been talking about him like the second coming of like Aaron Rodgers. So, I completely understand. But to your credit too, Clark, what you were saying of, he's for Mahomes to win it again, you're going to have to take it a step further. Aaron Rodgers had to do that. He basically had to throw like only 7 picks. And even then they were like, maybe Tom Brady. And it was like, no, it should be Aaron Rodgers. Let's not misconstrue all this.
All right. Yeah. So we're really long into our show, but I want to do one more. No, it's okay.
No, of course. Hey,
we're going to do one more. We could do 2 more if we do speed rounds on these. So what I'm thinking is you guys just say how you'd start bench, no justification. We're going to do it total TikTok style about how I post these.
Okay.
So this one is likely Super Bowl contenders. So which of these 3 teams do you think is gonna win the Super Bowl? The Minnesota Vikings, the Indianapolis Colts, or the San Francisco 49ers?
Oh, God. Who's going first?
Okay.
Clark, why don't you go first?
Okay, likelihood. I wish I could say none. I would say likelihood, I would go start Colts. Actually, I take it back already. Start 49ers, bench Colts, cut Vikings.
All right. Drew, what would you do?
I would go start Colts, bench Niners, and cut the Vikings.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins ain't winning anything.
It's funny. Like fantasy football AZ is banging the table right now that the Vikings are going to be like 15-2.
No, they're not. I like the Vikings. I think they're a playoff team. I just, again, if it gets into crunch time, I will not bet anything on Kirk Cousins winning something truthfully very meaningful.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think
Case Keenum
is going to regress.
Case Keenum is the guy you're going to rely on in a clutch performance versus
Case back out there, man.
All right, our last one, again, speed round. This one might take a little bit more thinking, so you can take a second.
Okay.
So this is NBA Dynasties. Which one would you start? Which one would you bench? Which would you cut? The Kobe-era Lakers, the Steph Curry-era Warriors, or the Tim Duncan-era Spurs?
Oh. Wow, those are really good. I'm glad you didn't say Bulls because that would have been the easiest.
Yeah, so I didn't pick the Bulls intentionally because Jordan won 6. So for perspective, the Kobe teams won 5, the Duncan's teams won 5, and now Steph has won 4. So for perspective on rings, if that helps.
Okay, who's going first?
Why don't you go first?
Drew, why don't you go first?
All right. You know what? I am such a huge Lakers fan. This kills me, but I'm gonna cut the Lakers.
Wow.
I love Kobe, but there was some really dark days in between that dynasty era that he had, and the Pau Gasol and Kobe Bryant years were good, but I felt like if it were Shaq and Kobe, there would be no question in my mind. But because of then after what happened with that, then all of a sudden you kind of had all those issues that happened, and then they got Pau Gasol and started winning again. I would have to cut him just because the Kobe Bryant era wasn't as spectacular when you were actually in it versus, thinking back on it. It was kind of like, oh, yeah, well, that was great. But there was just, I don't know, you're constantly pulling your hair out every week, it seemed like. So I'd have to cut them. I would bench the San Antonio Spurs. I love Tim Duncan. I just never thought they were always the best team. I just think they were the best teammates, if that makes sense. They were just a better all around. They got together and they were playing really well with each other. So I'm going to pick the Warriors because I love Steph Curry. Not only has he won 4 rings, obviously it's fewer of the 3, but he changed the game. He absolutely changed how we play basketball. I drive by a basketball court every single day, and I see these kids just pulling up way from 3. And I just remember when I was in elementary school trying to play basketball, my coaches would yell if I even shot near the free throw line. They were like, no, don't do that. Just go to the hoop or pass it. So it's crazy to me that you see these little kids just pulling up from deep three. And then I play basketball on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we get these young guys who are shooting almost from the logo, and I'm like, and they're draining them, and I'm like, good God, I can't even justify me taking that shot. So for me, I would have to go with the Warriors.
Okay,
I'm gonna carbon copy that. I think that was the perfect list you want to go with. I think the Lakers are my cut of that. I'll switch it. I take it back. I'll switch it. I'll have the Lakers as my my bench. I'll put the Spurs as my cut. I agree with what you said, Drew, about the Spurs itself. I don't think they were ever truthfully the most talented team that there was overall. I think they probably, of the group, debatably, and not even the group, because the Lakers saw that Phil Jackson, right? I mean, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't even say they had Popovich is one of the best coaches of all time, but I would say they didn't have the best coach of them, because you still had, obviously, Phil Jackson, the Lakers.
The Zen master.
So, and then the top for me is I think it's the Warriors, and I also don't think the Warriors are done winning them yet. I think the Warriors have a couple more left up the sleeve, actually. So I think the way that's shaping out, that I think people will historically remember this, because I think the Warriors are going to make some moves in the offseason. I think you're going to get a full season of Clay really, really healthy. Steph is still Steph. I think you saw a big step forward from Andrew Wiggins. So they have a three right there. That's certainly a core. I mean, it's not quite the same that it was with, when Kevin Durant was there. Now you just got to wonder, does Kevin Durant regret leaving this? Because what could have been with this now is just insane. So, I mean, so for me, I think the Warriors are there at number one. I think they win more. I think what you're seeing, like, as Andrew said, Steph has changed the way basketball is played. I mean, again, every single time I watch the NBA, as you alluded to, you see guys pull up from way beyond the arc. And that was something, even just 20, 30 years ago, that was not even a thought process.
Clark, can I say one thing? It was amazing to me that the shot that Dame Lillard had against Paul George when he was against, I believe it was OKC and Portland in that playoff game, and he hit the game winner to win the series. Mm-hmm. And there was a debate whether it was the right shot or not. Like 5 years prior to that, we would have said that was the worst shot taken ever.
Oh, easily. Because there would have been like, why wouldn't you drive? Why wouldn't you time better shots? Not pull up from basically, one of the side logos that they have there for advertising. I mean, that's where the shot was. So, Steph definitely, I mean, I think just basketball as a whole has transitioned to that clearly, but Steph has been a big part of it. So I think, again, Warriors number one. I think they're going to keep winning. I think they're not done. I think they got maybe one or two more left in them before you close the chapter or full book on this dynasty that they got going right now.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but thank you so much for coming onto the show, Drew. It sucks that Cody had to hop off or a little bit earlier. That's
sorry about that.
No,
I'm sure
don't
we'll
worry
get
about
another
it.
episode, so it's not like this is going to be the only time we do something like this.
You guys are
together,
welcome on at any point. Thank you for coming on. Thanks for making our show a little bit more interesting. Thanks for giving us new perspectives on sports that Clark and I talk about in echo chambers.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. We were so excited to come on here. I know he's so pissed that he had to go. Okay. I just want to say thank you guys so much for, first of all, shouting us out on TikTok and YouTube and on your podcast. We appreciate all of that. I've been following your guys' show. I listened back to your old episodes, so I've listened to all your episodes. So, and I will continue for sure. I love what you guys are talking about. I love your start bench cut. I kind of wanted to steal it from you guys, but I was like, I can't
no,
do it.
you
because...
can steal it from us.
Okay. I might have to because I love this.
You can steal it.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
We're not the originators of the idea, so.
No, we've seen other people do it before. We just thought it was a fun idea.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on for sure, though. I am sorry. I know I am very long-winded. I constantly apologize to Cody. After every episode, I'm always like, hey, man, so sorry. And he's like, no, you're good. You're good. So I feel bad. I hijacked a lot of them, but I do appreciate you guys having me on here.
Please, Ethan probably appreciated listening to someone else besides me. So I just done my job the whole time anyway. So.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks.
Yeah, man.
And then to all of our listeners, please go follow them. Let's start with that. Drew Code Sports Show. Please go listen to it. Please go listen to their episodes. Please go shout them out on TikTok, Twitter. You guys have like Instagram? Yes,
we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, we're on it. Everything is at Drew Code Sports Talk. The only thing that's different is Twitter, which is at Drew_code. So that's the only difference. And if you guys are interested to, if you don't mind me plugging something.
No, go for it.
We're planning on having a fantasy football league, and we're trying to get as many people as we can on there. We're talking about having some prizes and stuff. So, you guys are obviously more than welcome to, if you guys are interested, more than welcome to join too. That would be great. And I have to show off my fantasy football trophy that I won last year. Of course, the champion here. So I just wanted to say we are going to be starting that. So if anyone is interested, let us know, social media or email. Please let us know if you're interested, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, for sure. And let us know if you ever want to come back on the show. From
I do.
What I've heard, Clark, or I know I am. I don't know if Clark is, but I heard that I'm coming on to your show. So look out for that coming up soon.
Yes.
So I will be featured on their show. I don't know if Clark's coming with me, but
I'd be happy.
look out. I'm also going to be on another podcast tomorrow. So look out for that. Clark and I are starting to branch out, look into new things, get to know some of the creators. Clark and I are still new at this. We've been doing it like a month. So we're still having fun. And then he shouted himself out. Let's shout us out. So go subscribe to us on YouTube, TikTok, whatever. You guys know I say it at the end of every episode. Thanks to all of our listeners. Thanks to all the fun we had today. Thank you to you guys for being our first guest. It was such an honor to have you. And thank you, the audience, for listening.
Thanks.